WWL Louisiana News at 6 begins with breaking news.
Now you have a name. I'm Neil Duhon. I was raped, sodomized, choked, unconscious by a priest named Father Lawrence Hecker.
The man who finally brought down one of the most notorious child rapists New Orleans has ever seen tells his story for the first time exclusively to WWL Louisiana Chief Investigative Reporter David Hammer and our reporting partner Ramon Vargas of The Guardian. Good evening, I'm Mike McDaniel. This past December, Lawrence Hecker pleaded guilty to kidnapping and raping a 16-year-old boy back in 1975. That boy was Neil Duhon. Now Duhon is sharing his story with us, and he's demanding accountability from the church and the officials who helped cover up the crimes.
In the fall of 1973, Lawrence Hecker was a 41-year-old priest at St. Teresa the Little Flower Church, and Neil Duhon was a 14-year-old freshman at St. John Vianney, the Catholic prep school next door. Duhon remembers starting a service assignment at Little Flower and meeting Father Hecker there.
He told me what I would be doing, gave me the tour of the church, and I remember when we came up to that little room in the bell tower.
And for the next year and a half, that little storage room in the Little Flower bell tower was Duhon's refuge. But in July 1975, it became a torture chamber.
Next thing you know, Father Hecker showed up in the doorway.
Duhon says Hecker told him St. John was starting a wrestling team and showed him a few basic moves. Then it got weird.
So he gets in behind me, and I noticed that his weight had shifted on me. It was much higher than what it was before.
Duhon says Hecker sodomized him, wrapped his arms around his neck, and then the teenager blacked out.
I thought just seconds had passed. You know, I was calling out his name and everything, but no answer.
He saw long shadows in the bell tower and realized he'd been unconscious not for seconds, but for hours.
Come on, Neil. You know, I had to get out of that church. Right.
A few days later, Duhon told his mom what happened.
My mom just kind of looked at me. You know, I could tell that my mom was in shock.
His parents said nothing more about it. Duhon locked away thoughts of what happened until he started getting into fights at school and was hauled in to see the principal, a future priest named Paul Calamari.
I felt the pressure from him, you know, why I was fighting, why I'm so mad, you know, and he kept pushing that.
Yeah.
And at one point, I just blurted out to him. I told him the exact same thing I told my mom.
He told Calamari that Hecker had raped him.
He got mad at me. He blew up like a pufferfish, and he hit and demanding who did I tell, and I blurted out to my mom.
Calamari called Duhon's parents into school and gave him two choices.
First option was I had to agree to go see a psychiatrist that the archdiocese would provide, or B, get expelled.
He chose the psychiatrist apparently provided by the school.
I was angry. I was isolating myself. You know, I was trying to forget about it.
Duhon went on to become an EMT and later a police officer in Northwest Ohio. He kept his trauma locked away for decades until November 2018, when New Orleans Archbishop Gregory Aymond released a list of dozens of clergymen credibly accused of molesting children.
That's when I told my wife. I said, Lawrence Hecker there, he raped me. He choked me unconscious. And I told my story to her, and she was overwhelmed by it.
Also on that list was Calamari, and our investigations in 2020 found 3 other teachers of Duhon's were also accused of molesting students.
When I look back at it, it says, gee, there was a pedophile ring back then.
The church faced mounting sex abuse lawsuits in 2020 and filed for bankruptcy protection. In one of the early bankruptcy hearings, Judge Meredith Grable said she, quote, intends to destroy the church's files on Hecker.
How one person can keep this secret, the archdiocese secret, and just destroy records, things like that. They gotta get their head examined.
Attempts to bury Hecker's record failed. Our reporting partner, Ramon Vargas at The Guardian, got a copy of the church's secret Hecker files. They included a typed confession Hecker gave in 1999, admitting he'd sexually molested or harassed at least 7 boys. On August 22, 2023, Vargas and I went to confront Hecker with his own words. In here, it's not just allegations anymore. Here you're saying that you did this.
Evidently, yes.
But when we asked him specifically about your case, we didn't say your name, but we said, did you choke out and rape anybody? He said no. And he was very quick to definitive to say no. What was your reaction to that at the time?
I said, you lying piece of
2 weeks later, New Orleans DA Jason Williams charged Hecker with rape and kidnapping. On the morning of December 3rd, 2024, as the trial was finally about to begin, Hecker pleaded guilty as charged.
It's like a gotcha moment.
Did you feel that in the moment, or did it take you a while for that to sink in?
I felt that in the moment.
Yeah.
It's like, yes.
And 2 weeks later, at Hecker's sentencing, Duhon saw his rapist for the first time in nearly 50 years.
Yeah, he looked different.
Yeah.
In the wheelchair, but still, that was Lawrence Hecker. And I'm walking up, and all I could do is just stare at him, and my brain just went wacky.
Duhon took the witness stand and gave a victim impact statement. As he scanned the courtroom, he says he noticed something missing.
Archdiocese says they're here to support the survivors, yet they don't even send a representative from the Archdiocese there. Wow, that was a lot of support for us.
So you don't think that that's walking with the survivors?
Everything that the Archdiocese says about being there for the survivors is just hollow words.
The 93-year-old Hecker got a life sentence. He spent 2 weeks in prison and died. Duhon says that's when he finally felt free.
To come forth, with my story, to let people know, hey, it's not just an abuse survivor being named anonymously in the paper or on TV or anything. Now you have a name. I'm Neil Duhon. I was raped, sodomized, choked, unconscious by a priest named Father Lawrence Hecker. I couldn't say that with my name attached to it prior to his death.
But Duhon says there's one more reason he came forward now.
The Archdiocese had a part of it, so they need to be held accountable. And you can't keep hiding behind this bankruptcy. They are responsible for all of this.
David Hammer, WWL, Louisiana.
The Archdiocese did report one of Hecker's crimes to New Orleans police back in 2002, 3 years after his written confession. When Hecker died, the church did release a statement saying, quote, "We hope and pray that his death will bring closure and peace to these survivors."